a 90-year-old man who fell and died from complications of a hip fracture, a 60-year-old man dead from a gunshot wound to the head. These are some of the deaths in Palm Beach County recently and incorrectly labeled as COVID deaths in medical examiner records.
COVID-19 deaths have been tabulated in the Department of Health statistics. When it wasn't the underlying cause of death, what was the underlying cause of death that still might have been called a COVID death?
So we have an auto accident. The passenger was ejected from the vehicle, but there was COVID in the system, so therefore it counted as a COVID death. I have other examples where COVID isn't the underlying cause of death, where we have a fall. Another example of we have a freshwater drowning, we have dementia, we have a stroke, and multi-organ failure.
Technically, even if you died of a clear alternate cause, but you had COVID at the same time, it's still listed as a COVID death. So
97% suffering from diabetes, heart disease, leukemia, colon and prostate cancer, and more. Most had 2 to 3 conditions. Some had 5 or 6 serious illnesses, but all of them were listed as COVID-19 deaths.
So the example that was given to me by a government source was basically if you had tested positive in February for coronavirus, you'd recovered, you'd been fine for the last few months, but then you'd been hit by a lorry or hit by a bus yesterday and died, your death would still be added on to that coronavirus tally.
When we see these stark figures, they're reported in very sort of ponderous tones on the television. You know, we've had 500 more deaths or 400, whatever it is on any given day.
Taking the total number across the UK to 41,759.
These are deaths with COVID, not of COVID. So you can be in hospital for a whole variety of other reasons. You can have heart disease, you can have cancer. If you test positive for COVID, you still end up on these statistics, don't you?
Wait, did you say people who weren't even tested for COVID-19 had that listed as their cause of death?
If the doctors thought they had symptoms of COVID, they listed COVID as the cause of death.
Okay.
Why would they want to skew the number of deaths due to COVID-19?
Sometimes we're so darn interested in just jazzing up the fear factor that, sometimes people's ability to think for themselves is paralyzed if they're frightened enough.